everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Deep Thoughts. And today we are talking about No Guns Life, Episode 1, Renegade Extended. Now, before we begin, I do want to remind you all that if you would like to have your name shouted out in next week's No Guns Life video, then be sure to share this video around on the internet and then tag me at JoJo Talks Too Much over on Twitter, and I will be sure to shout your name out in next week's video. Now, with that said, we're just going to go ahead and jump right into it, and I have two major things that I would like to talk about in regards to this week's premiere. I want to talk about the man with a gun for a head, and I want to talk about the sights and sounds of Zawaldo. And I guess it's worth noting that I'll also quickly touch on the OP and the ED at the tail end of the video, but without further ado, I think there is no better place to start talking about No Guns Life than the titular gun himself, JoJo. Or I guess, as I like to call him, Abakio, who started cosplaying as Gunhead from My Hero Academia. In all seriousness though, yes, this is the Seiyu who plays Abakio, who is one of my favorite Joe bros after Part 5, and it was a pleasant surprise to hear him as this sort of gruff and tough, but also sort of funny noir detective. And it's funny because I am recording this very soon after I finished recording my thoughts on Beastars, and I had labeled Beastars as a mystery that had some sort of noir vibes in its tone. But if Beastars had noir vibes, No Guns Life has noir overtones. Like, this thing is a very much straight up neo-noir, I don't want to say crime story necessarily, but a neo-noir cyberpunk story, and I totally dig it. And apparently also Hideo Kojima digs it, so you know, if Kojima, the man himself, the insane man that he is, digs the insanity of No Guns Life, is at least worth checking out the first episode, right? And that's probably what led you here to this video, so thanks for watching. But I think what really held the episode together, right, the glue that kept me invested, was none other than the titular gun himself, JoJo. JoJo is a genuinely interesting MC, especially for this show, right? Because again, like I said, it's very much a neo-noir cyberpunk story. And it's interesting in as much as that we get this character who I'm assuming he had some sort of involvement in the war that they keep bringing up, because the setting is in a post-war city that's like run by this greedy corporation. We'll get into it as we go, but JoJo is depicted as a sort of gruff, like, friend of the people, but sort of down on himself. He doesn't really trust too many people. He likes having people around, but he's not sure who he can really trust, because he hasn't let anybody close enough to pull the trigger. That's the trigger that his head has. His head actually has a trigger. I'm assuming at some point we're going to see somebody pull the trigger on his head, and it's going to fire a insanely big bullet or like a laser beam or something insane. And JoJo is depicted as a sort of fixer. He is the guy you call to solve issues caused by extendeds, and the extendeds is what they're calling those who get sort of cybernetic enhancements in this world. So that'd be like the people who get like cybernetic arms, cyborg eyeballs, gun heads. That's what you call them. You call them the extendeds. And when stuff goes wrong with the extendeds, if you don't want to call the police or whatever the governing force is in this world, you call JoJo to fix it for you. And we see him, like, right off the pop, the first time we see JoJo, he is fixing a problem at this bar. I can't remember what it, like, the No Bar Arms. I don't remember what it was called, but the bar is basically run by this lovely woman who is very sweet and fun, and I like her a lot, and I kind of hope that maybe she gets her... The little relationship she had, or the dynamic that she had with JoJo, has me assuming that, like... And it's the vibe you get throughout the episode, that JoJo is very much ingratiated into the city. Like, everyone in the city knows who he is, or at the very least is, like, somewhat familiar with him. There's a woman who's like, a gun for a head, and the guy's like, you don't know who that is? That's JoJo. And she's like, whoa, oh, okay. Like, that's the guy. And I thought it was interesting. I like that they have this sort of pre-established relationship, the barkeep and JoJo. And when she kissed him, I thought that was Like, I was like, whoa! It was very abrupt, but when she's like, don't think too much of it, it's just a thank you, and she goes into the bar, and he has that, like, wow, like, kissing me, doing silly stuff like that, it's ridiculous. It was the anime version of the, like, of all the dames in all the world who had to stumble into my town and had to be her. Like, you know what I mean? It's that, like, noir, like, it just has that noir vibe, and that even that scene on its own, just like that little kiss and like the interaction between the characters before and after, of her like giving him the kiss after talking about how like I don't let anybody close. And she gives him the kiss and then tells him like don't think anything of it, and he runs off. But then he has the like he's flustered and like why would you friggin' don't do that. It reminds me of like every like noir crime story where like the femme fatale kisses the noir detective and sort of saunters off, and the detective's like, I'm cool, everything's fine, I got this. It's sort of that vibe, and I dig it because it makes JoJo like this sort of hard-boiled detective, or not so much detective, but this hard-boiled like fixer, I guess. But what I like about it is that you see that he also has this sort of comedic side to him, that he gets flustered when girls sort of like push themselves onto him. He gets freaked out at the idea of water because he could rust, right? So he's immediately like, oh no! He has to like immediately dry himself off, and he like is sort of I don't say a goofball because he's not necessarily a goofball, but he has this comedic tone to him that keeps the show sort of light. I don't want to say light because it is a pretty intense show, but or not intense, but it's a pretty, you know, it's a cyberpunk neo-noir. It's going to be kind of heavy in theme and in visuals and tone, but it still has, it carries itself with a bit of levity, and that's reflected in the main character himself, because again, it's called No Guns Life, and the main character has a gun for a head. You can only take that premise so far. That's not to say that JoJo is some jokey slouch, though, because JoJo is a tank, man, and I mean that in every sense of the word. Towards the end of the episode, we see this man straight up punch a train off its rails. He Falcon punched that thing into infinity, and like the way he like spun the revolver on his hand. He has like a barrel on his hand. He spins it around. He like reels back and punches the train. And I can't remember what he said, but he had like a name for the punch, and it like rocketed the train off the rails and sent it flying up into the air. And I was like, that is the dopest thing. That is the coolest thing in this whole episode, an entire episode of dope visuals. That might be my favorite. Just seeing him like reel back and punch the train off the rails. It was so dope. And JoJo is just, I don't know, he's a good dude. You buy that he is genuine. And I like his whole, like, the things I can't stand most in this world is humidity and kids. And it's funny to hear him say that, given that the rest of the episode has him running around trying to save a kid. And the relationship that he shares with the kid is very genuine. And the whole twist with the kid, by the way, is genius. Like, I didn't see that coming at all, but it makes sense, again, given like the fact that there's this random dude who is in this crazy cybernetic, like, it looked like a suit of armor, but apparently it was like a cybernetic body, and it was like, whoa, and you're protecting this unconscious kid. The kid like is unconscious the whole time, and I'm sure other people caught it, but I genuinely didn't. Like, when he's explaining like how he can do what he does, and even JoJo takes a second to put it together. The show put it together before I even really realized what was happening, and so the twist genuinely caught me off guard, and I was like, whoa, that was actually so clever. I really loved it, but at the same time, while I was thinking like that is so clever, it got to the part where the kid's saying like, all I wanted to do was see outside. Like, they cut all my tendons, so I couldn't run. I could only escape through this body, and I had to use the body to pick me up, and I just wanted to find you because I thought maybe you would believe me, and you were the only one who did, and it was nice to know you. And I was like, oh, this is like really, really sad. Like, it was genuinely heartbreaking, and all you wanted to see was JoJo save this kid. You just wanted to see this kid run away with JoJo and like have JoJo protect this kid. Even though JoJo claims that he doesn't like kids, you know deep down that he wanted this kid safe, and you felt that. And that scene held a lot of weight. Like, I was genuinely like impressed with how much that scene got me to care, and about a kid who was unconscious the whole time and a man with a gun for a head. The only issue I can really see with JoJo as a character, and I guess the show as a whole, is that maybe JoJo is a bit too jokey, Now, I laughed every time, like at every joke that they make with JoJo, like him getting flustered over the kiss, him getting freaked out by the rust, him freaking out when he sees the leftover body of the kid with the big hole in his head, and he's like, ah! And the kid's like, no, I'm freaked out by you. Like, that scene was funny, like them both freaking out at each other. It was funny. I liked all of it, but I can't see somebody like who wanted a neo-noir, like dark, gritty, cyberpunk story. I can see some of those people being like, what the hell is this? Like, it's too comedic, it's too anime. Like, I don't like the jokes, the chibi style when he gets flustered. Like, I can see some people being upset with that. I don't have any problem with it. I thought it was friggin' great. And speaking of friggin' great, how about we jump to the other thing I wanted to talk about in regards to this week's episode, and that is the sights and sound of this Zawaldo. And I gotta say, it is fun. I mean, we've seen this, right? Again, cyberpunk, neo-noir, crime story. But we have seen this setting before. Even adding the post-war element to it, it's not necessarily anything super new. We have seen this before, but because the show knows exactly what it wants to be, it excels at that. It really does sell this world as this sort of like the neon lights, the dark, gritty alleyways with like all the cybernetically enhanced people who maybe went too far with their enhancements and stuff like that. Like it has a cool vibe to it. Everything feels it just feels familiar yet different, and I mean that in the best way that I can. I thought the environments were really well handled. They're not my favorite environments of the season thus far, but they are really good, and they just sort of sell this neon-soaked, gritty setting. And of course, as with any story like this, you have the greedy corporations running the city with modified soldiers doing their bidding. And yeah, man, it's freaking great. Like, if you're into this if you want this show, like if you heard this idea and you just want a cyberpunk story to tide you over till Cyberpunk 2077 comes out, this is for you. It's not going to become something you don't expect. It is exactly what you expect, but it excels at what it wants to do, so you're going to walk away really happy. Even the soundtrack is just really, really solid and just everything that I wanted. It has the saxophone and piano giving it that jazzy feeling. It's just phenomenal. I loved it. I would almost lean more towards this soundtrack than the Beastars soundtrack. As much as I liked the soundtrack in Beastars' premiere, I think the soundtrack here fits this world a little bit better. Like, that sort of jazzy feel really blends well with the noir. I think it's just perfect. I thought the soundtrack really elevated the episode in a big bad way. I really dug that. I'd say the only real surprise when it comes to this week's episode is the random inclusion of the Unreal Engine. Now, I gotta give credit where it's due. My boy Veridon over in the T-Squadron patron exclusive Discord, my boy pointed it out there first before I had even seen the episode. He watched it first and was like, dude, they used Unreal in the episode. And I was like, what? No way. So I had my eye out looking for any sign of the Unreal Engine, and I thought I knew like a couple things, but it was only once I finished the episode and like went to the Discord and me and Veridon talked about it that I realized like, oh, like Veridon pointed out, it's because for me, I was very certain that it was the train, but Veridon's the one who pointed out like, no man, it's clearly the backgrounds. And yeah, the backgrounds are totally in Unreal, and that's so interesting. Like, that is so friggin' neat that instead of like using like the regular CG or just drawing a background or something like that, they actually used a game engine. They used Unreal, which is, well, unreal and unheard of, at least for me. If you know of any other anime that has used the Unreal Engine before, do let me know in the comments, because that was a genuine surprise. I didn't know that it was gonna, like, I mean, Veridon told me, but I didn't know how it would be used. I was so curious to see, and I thought it kind of worked. I'm sure some people are gonna say like, it stands out, because it does stand out, but I thought given the setting, it totally worked. But on that note, everybody, I'm gonna say that is a video. That is all my thoughts, and overall, I would be happy to put this episode, this premiere, in the A tier. I thought this was really, really good. I don't really have too many complaints, just the one, really. And yeah, I'd say overall, this was a really good time. Absolutely worth the watch. On that note, everybody, that just about wraps everything up. But before we go, as always, I want to give a big shout out to the good folks over on Patreon, namely those in the Earl Grey tier. Calvin Atkinson, Crowbar of Irony, Dominic, Urza, Ginkotaku, No For Nothing, Maria Teresa, Mirth Mouser, Omner Garamond, Cell, Shadow Creative, Sipco Games, Somastan, Steven, Tristan, and Verdon. Thank you all so much for your continued support over on Patreon, and hey, if you too would like to join the T Squadron, then by all means go ahead and check out that first link in the description to check out our Patreon page, see all the cool rewards you can get for as little as $1 a month, and get access to our Patreon exclusive Discord. But on that note, everybody, that's going to be a video, so I hope you all enjoyed, and if you did, you've probably been on the internet long enough to know what to do already, so I ain't going to tell you, but I will say that it is appreciated, and if you are feeling stressed out today, then you go have yourself a warm cup of tea, and I will talk to you all again real soon.